Thank you once again for joining us on Combustible Elements. I'm Big Mel, joined by Ruben the Monarch, the Wizard of Numbers, and Aaron the Hitman. We're going to talk about how we're officially in a recession. This is not what I really know. I know about inflation, but this ain't in my wheelhouse. So we're going to go to the Wizard of the Numbers, and then he's going to tell us what's going on right now or why he think this is going on. So talk to us, Ruben.
I'm not going to pretend that I'm the Wizard of Numbers. I'm not. I'm going based on what I've learned. You know, I'm going based on what I've learned.
Trying to hype you up, man. These is adjectives to hype you up, bro.
I'm gonna simmer it down just a little bit, just a little. No, but
I mean, the way sometimes the way people count on their fingers and they can't count, they got to pull out a calculator for simple addition and subtraction. In today's world, you probably are Wizard of Numbers because people don't count by themselves. They can't do it in their head. But go ahead.
So what I've learned is the way you figure out what a recession is essentially two negative quarters, two pullback in the economy for in back-to-back quarters. So in the first quarter, which is the first 3 months of the year, the economy pulled back, I believe, 1.6%. And in the second quarter, which is the following 3 months up until from January to March, and then from March to June. So the following 3 months, the economy did another retraction of 0.9%, which now officially puts us in a recession. So what does that really mean for us? What does that really mean for the everyday American people?
Can I ask a question before you tell us how that affects us? When you say the economy pulled back, can you clarify that? Do you mean we gained more money during the economy, less money during the economy? Are you talking about the stock market?
So, what are you talking about? It's really overall like what when we talk about the job market, when we talking about unemployment, we talking about goods and services and things like that. It's a combination of all those things, and if you're based on the numbers and adding all of those things up, whether it's unemployment numbers and jobs made, the amount of money that you got going out and coming in, and the debt ratio, inflation, and everything else, housing market, we retracted, we regressed. And the day before the numbers officially came out, you had Powell, who was the Fed chairman, coming out saying, well, I don't think we're in a recession. You can't, look at the way we've done X, Y, Z. Look at this and look at that. You can't say that's a recession. It doesn't matter what the definition is. Even if you look up the definition of recession, it can tell you a recession is a significant, widespread, and prolonged downturn in the economy activity. So because of the way it's worded, when you hear significant, widespread, and prolonged downturn, you might be like, well, it hasn't been prolonged. It's only been it's only been 3 months, or it's only been 6 months. So it's not like it's been years and years on end. It doesn't have to be years and years on end. It's the technical term is back-to-back, retraction in the economy in back-to-back quarters. And that's what we have so far. You add the fact that the Federal Reserve has also added 0.75 basis point to the interest on the interest rate, that causes even more of a pullback, for everyone else. So now if you was trying to buy a house, not only has the price of these houses gone up something significant, the interest to buy the house, that number has also gone up. So it costs more to buy it, and it costs more to borrow the money to buy it. So it all the way around 8%. They're saying the inflation is at 8%. I believe it's probably even higher, and we haven't even factor in the cost of goods for today. Like a lot of the prices that we're seeing right now are based on what happened last year. We haven't started paying the price for the things based on what people are charging this year yet. Like, if you're complaining about gas now, if you complain about the price of food now, if you're complaining about anything price-wise right now, Wait till we start having to pay the price for what it's costing farmers to farm food today. Wait till we start paying the price for what it's costing, people that grow cows and all the different meats that we eat, that we got to have on our table. Wait till we start paying that price now. I mean, we haven't factored in that price yet, because everything that we have, as high as it is right now, is still based on last year's price. And there's a new thing. It's not on. There's actually a new thing right now where if you buy something from one of the major retail stores, a lot of those major retail stores are allowing you to keep the item and giving you your money back. That is putting such a major strain on the trucking industry, and not just trucking. Well, the trucking industry and the chains, the food and chain and everything else supply, because now you're giving people their money back. You're telling them to keep the item, but someone still has to move that item. So as they're allowing people to keep the items and keep their money, people are still buying more items. But as they're buying more items, those companies, they're not paying the full amount. So these the trucking companies for the loads to bring the items to their warehouses, to bring the items to their stores, because they don't have that money. They're returning the money back to the customers.
Okay, so does that mean that these companies also have a wholesale of items that they didn't sell already? Like it's like a overload, like a back supply where they could just be like, you keep it, or I'll send another one out for free or whatever, because they already got an overflow.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, you can't, sending it out for free is not free, because they're sending it out. They're telling you it's free, but all they're doing is cutting the cost by trying to pay less for the loads for the trucking companies that got to move those items, because those items still got to get somewhere. They still got to get from A to B. You're keeping your money, and they're telling you they'll bring you something else, free shipping. Free shipping is not free. Somebody got to pay for that shipping. It ain't moving from where it's at to come to your door for free. Somebody got to pay for that.
So I have a question. So what you're telling me is at the beginning of the pandemic, they were complaining that they couldn't supply stuff because of the trucking industry. And trucking industry took a major hit on the front end because of the pandemic. People weren't moving.
And now they're taking a hit as we speak right now.
At the back end, because they're cutting the cost, what it takes to ship stuff at the company, at the trucking industry, to save money. And
keep in mind, fuel has doubled damn near since that whole situation happened. So now you got rising costs of fuel for diesel, and cheaper costs on loads. So the loads ain't paying nothing. The fuel is the fuel that it takes to move the truck, to move those items, is essentially eating up the whole cost of whatever they were trying to pay you for to move those items. So essentially, in the trucking industry, you're moving freight for free.
So they saving money all over. Like first they had an influx of money because people had to buy stuff online. And now they still cutting costs to make more money. Like they're not happy with the trillions of dollars that the bigger companies made delivering these items online and stuff like that, overpricing. So now they cutting it on the back end to the worker. Because really the trucking industry is the worker.
That's who always pays when it comes to things like this, man. When the pandemic first happened, we heard a lot about workers who are essential workers or whatever, and those people were the ones that were on the front line serving everyone while everybody else was staying at home. And now, essential workers, we don't even hear that term anymore, almost, because that's like it's almost a forgotten term. But the truckers have always been essential workers, and they're essentially the ones that gotta bear the brunt of what's essentially happening now, which is a supply chain issue where we got an overflow of items because everybody had all this money, everybody had all this cash, and everybody was getting money while they were sitting at home, and they were starting to buy everything. And now people don't even want to go to the stores anymore because they could get delivery for free. It's not free.
Okay, but now see, to what you were saying about essential workers, that was just some bullshit to make the workers feel better. because they needed those workers to do those jobs. You know what I mean? As soon as they didn't need them, wasn't shit essential anymore. So all that essential workers you don't hear no more, because that shit was temporary from the start. That was just to make people feel like, listen, I am valued, so I am going to go to work. I'm not going to sit home like everybody else. But they don't give a shit about that. Most of the man, whatever you want to call them, government, whatever, because they ain't shit for the essential worker. And I don't care what any of them say. They ain't do a goddamn thing. Now, I have a question, but this is more so to me, who's ignorant of how the feds do things. And just from what you were saying, how in the hell, why in the hell would the feds raise the interest rate when they saying that inflation is at an all-time high in decades? Isn't that like counterproductive? Because like you said, now your interest on your loans are higher.
They gotta raise interest. They gotta raise interest because they printed too much money. They printed way too much money the last 2 years. And majority of the money that was circulating in our economy over the last 2 years was just printed money. It was just, it had no real value. Here's the thing. One of the things I learned in traveling is we live in a bubble here. So a lot of what's happening here has been happening in a lot of our neighboring countries for a while now. But CNN don't talk about things like that because it has nothing. It doesn't bring in money. It doesn't bring in revenue. So we just focus on BS, and we get fed whatever we get fed, so they can keep you on the leash and keep you at bay. But if you travel to Mexico, if you travel to anywhere in South America, these people work hard. These people are smart. These people are educated. These people do what they need to do. But when the government decides that they're gonna gamble with the money and they're gonna put the money in some type of money market account, or they're gonna allow Wall Street to take over, this is what happens. And we've allowed Wall Street to take over our economy. And when Wall Street takes over our economy, all they want is they want you to print. They don't care. They don't care what the value of the worth is. They just want you to print. Like you hear about all these trillionaires and billionaires. Like where? How? What gold is there to equal that amount of wealth that these people have? What hard assets is actually there to match up to the amount of wealth that a lot of these so-called people have? Like you can tell me you got however quadrillion, trillion dollars based on what? Is it land? Is it gold? Is it silver? Is it property? Is it what hard assets? A lot of it be stocks. A lot of it is stocks options, and stocks are relative. Like it's as simple as that. It's like my company, I can value it as whatever I want it to be valued, and if somebody's willing to pay me that for it, now that's what it's worth. Does that mean that's really what it's worth? These guys have been manipulating the market, and this is what happens because they manipulated the market. They printed too much money. Now we find ourselves in a situation where they got to pull it back. And not only do they have to pull it back, they got to pull all of it back because if they allow it to keep going, the economy is going to collapse and collapse to the point where we're not going to be able to come back from it. They could raise interest rates to whatever they want. The dollar is going to be worth close to nothing. And if the dollar becomes worthless, the world as we know it collapsed because the world still follows the dollar.
That was going to be my next point. I never thought they had enough gold in Fort Knox, wherever the hell they had it, for the money that they printed even back then. But who's to prove it? You know what I mean? Because a lot of countries base their stuff on the dollar, so they're going to just go by what they say. Because our whole economy system and the whole economy system around the world is flawed. Aaron, do you want to chime in? You got something you want to say?
Oh, no.
You've been over there kind of quiet.
I was just listening.
Like I got some bills coming and shit. You just listening like, yo, this is too rich for me, yo.
No, I was listening, but the research that I did, what Ruben alluded to earlier, because Ruben was saying that we're in a recession, but they're not classifying where we are right now as a recession. And what I concluded as to why they haven't said that we're in a recession, going by the definition that Ruben gave, because I did look up the definition, but Ruben did as well. So going by the definition that Ruben gave, like we would be considered in a recession, but every other recession, the other classification that they had on there was the job market, like how many people got laid off. And right now we're not at a number where enough people were laid off and jobless for them to consider a recession. And that's the only, and they didn't come right out and say that, but that's looking at the numbers and looking at all the things that I looked up as to why in 2007, in 2009, 2008, they considered those recessions, because going by the definition, it lined up to what a recession would be. But then they also had the numbers of the people that was laid off.
Okay, so I'm gonna chime in and ask you a question, because first of all, I know why they don't say we need a recession, because as soon as you say something negative, it affects the stock market. If they just out and out say something negative, it affects the stock market. Just like when he raised the interest rate, it affects the stock market right away, or lowers it, it affects it right away. So I know why they don't do that. The second thing is, over the last couple of years, this I do know, there's been a point of contention over these numbers for the recession, because they'll say we got 4 million people off unemployment because 4 million people got jobs. But what they not telling you is the jobs they got may have been part-time jobs. They may have been because their payments was over. You know what I'm saying? Like somebody go get a job because they're not getting those payments over. So they play with the numbers. You know what I mean? And I do know that, but I don't understand why. Like, we have to be in a recession, because the biggest way of knowing you in a recession is, do you have money in your pocket? Are you paying the same thing? The guys on the bottom end of the spectrum know when you in a recession more than the guys on the top. I'm sorry, Aaron. I just wanted to chime that in, because of the job market. But continue, please.
But if you look at it that way, like a job is a job. So I mean, at the same time, if people are getting employment, regardless if it's full-time, part-time, if you're getting $12 an hour to $6 an hour, I mean, you still got a job. But if
I agree with that. But it's a difference whether you can survive off of it too. That's my only point of bringing it to the forefront. A guy that's working 20 hours is not living like a guy that's working the same thing. That was my only point of it. Is that really should they classify it as a full-time job? We got jobs, and should be classified as full-time jobs or as part-time jobs. And it affects your healthcare status too if you're part-time, I think. But I mean, go ahead, continue. I'm sorry. That was my only point.
In that regard,
it's a major one.
We talked about that earlier in previous shows, which everybody should go back and watch all of our previous shows. If you haven't, you should go back and check all of those out and then get back to this one. But we talked about your lifestyle of living. I mean, if you only making $12 an hour, then sometimes you gotta cut back. If you went from $18 an hour job and now you're making $12 an hour, you got to change your living habits. You got to change your lifestyle a little bit to match that. You can't keep living the same lifestyle, but it's all about how you living, because somebody making $40 an hour can still be struggling because they living beyond their means. But if you only making a certain amount of money, you got to learn how to budget. You got to learn how to make your money work for you, and I mean, cut back. Maybe you got to live in an apartment for a little bit, things like that. But I mean, I guess you can still classify it as the type of job that they have, or if it's part-time or full-time, and then medical and all that. But a job is a job. If you employing people, then people are employed.
So for those people that want to look back and hear this show, and it was a good show, I think it was Understanding Expectations. I think that was the name of it. Expectations is in that. And we talked about that in relationships, jobs, just living. So if you want to go back, that was a great show to listen to. And we all need to hear that, because we all tend to, especially Americans, we all tend to live beyond our means a little bit, because we think the next dollar is coming. You know what I mean? And there's some truth in that, but it's not some truth in that either. But continue. I'm sorry.
But like you said, you talked about a little bit on inflation. So I mean, if you maybe 10 years ago making $12 an hour, you could probably still have a house, pay your rent and your bills. But $12 an hour right now, You can't even put gas in your car. I mean, but if you down here in Florida with me, the gas prices is going down. So I don't know about y'all up there up north, but I mean,
that was a calm flex. That was a calm flex. You heard that? I heard that.
Look, his arms didn't flex out, but his beard got closer to the screen when he said that shit. So he was definitely flexing.
No, not at all. But at the same time, I mean, the money that you was making, 10 years ago you can't sustain that. If you making $12 an hour 10 years ago, you can't make $12 an hour right now and still live the same type of lifestyle that you was living.
Well, that's true. And that's the biggest complaint with our economy right now. Inflation has been rising even before the pandemic. The cost of living has been rising. Interest rates has been rising. The cost of goods have been rising. But a lot of times people's salaries been locked where they at. So it's an issue. Like, government is supposed to make stuff cheap. Now, people say stuff about other countries and they say, oh, they a third world country. Just because you consider them a third world country financially doesn't mean they're a third world country intelligence wise. Like, if you try to sell some goods at an unrealistic price in certain countries, they'll put you out of business. They like, yo, this shouldn't be that high. They can't afford to pay that. The government will crack down. The local government or their national government. You can't do certain things. But go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, I didn't want to cut you off.
I was going to say, at some point, the government should monitor the cost of certain things. And it's not hard to do. Most of our meats come from 4 different plants in the United States, 4 different plants. You're telling me that the government can't come in and say, listen, you paying too much, you charging too much money for these goods. Now, I admit they have to be fair. You have to consider food.
Communism, man.
I don't care if it's communism.
You gotta care because that's communism. This is a capitalistic country.
That's not communism because how is it?
Look,
hold it. Let me say my point.
You can't have the government dictating what prices when it comes to these things.
What the hell you mean? You have a president, 2 presidents that said we needed certain products, and the law says that that Defense Act law, you can make a company do something because you say that we need it. And they said we need them to keep
whatever. The government can.
You can.
Should they?
It doesn't matter. Yeah, they should.
This is the same conversation that we had in the other episode where you talking about that they should change the Constitution. Like, you want to get a government too much power. You're a communist.
I don't want to give them total power. You're misinterpreting.
You want a dictatorship or communism? That's what it sounds like.
But some things for the good of your people. It should be no question.
That's what communists say. That's what communists say. It's for the good of the people. And
you say that, but as an American, we're always taught that communism is 110% wrong. But in actuality, is it 100% wrong? Yes, I'm not going to live that way. However, some of the things that they have, some elements that they have in it makes sense. It makes sense for government and for its people. We're not going to give you free money. We're going to make you work for it. You know what I mean? You got to live.
China's communism, right?
Yeah, China's
communism.
Yeah. And they get what they want.
Are they happy over there? Are they content with what they got? Like, you know people that are living in China that are like, yo, man, this is awesome. This is great. I want this the way this is.
Have you heard people in China say that it's not?
You're not allowed.
I would know. Communism doesn't allow them to express themselves.
My brother is in China right now.
Communism doesn't allow them to express themselves, so I would not know.
You cannot.
We can't have this dialogue we having right now in the communist countries. You can't have it in Cuba. You can't have it in China. You damn sure can't have it in Russia.
Yo, they
can't have this.
They would shut Ruben.
Russia is not communist anymore. Russia is not communist anymore.
Listen.
They're a hardline country, but they're not communist. All these hardline countries aren't communist.
Man, Russia will strip you of your billions and throw you in jail. It don't even matter if you got money.
The U.S.
do it in China too.
The U.S. just did that to the Russian The Russian billionaires. They froze their assets. They do the same shit.
They froze them guys still had all their billion-dollar yachts and everything else, man. They tried to manipulate their money. All these guys did was convert their money from US dollars to yen. That's all they did. They
and
like,
you don't see the US government breaking people financially because they don't do what they want them to do. You've never seen a billionaire lose all his money, go to jail for some bullshit.
How many billionaires have went to jail in the US? I'll wait.
I'd have to look that up, bro.
I'll wait.
That's not something you can. That's not something you can just come up with. I can tell you
right now. There are matter of fact, the owner of Alibaba in China, said some stuff that the government didn't appreciate, and the company has been in a shithole ever since.
I'm not saying it don't happen.
This man
you're missing the point. You're missing the point. I don't care that they do that sometimes. Like if they're gonna break a person for whatever reasons, whatever rules they have, that's their reasons. What I'm saying is we've had presidents that ordered companies to do shit because of what was going on in the world. During the pandemic, we had 2 different presidents do that over food. Like, listen, we got an outbreak of COVID and the way they do the processing plant. Trump made them all go back to work. And then Biden made them do something. I forget what it was. Damn, I forget what it did. But they all used that Defense Act.
But that's the thing. You can't make somebody do something they don't want to do. The only way that it works is if you comply with it.
You put them in jail, that's all.
If you comply with it, then you can't put somebody in jail for not wanting to go to work.
What the hell are you talking about? They put people in jail for shit all the time. So you don't answer a question. They put you for a grand jury,
a company, in jail, dog. If you work for a company and then the pandemic hit and they was like, everybody gotta go back to work. If everybody's like, no, we're not going to work.
It's if a federal law and it's a law that they use during wartime, because that's when the law came in place. A law that they use during war crime, then it's probably classified as treason. Your ass is going to work.
I'm talking about regular jobs like that. So that's the thing. So
you think the people that don't work in the food plant, that's not a regular fucking job? That's a regular job, and they did that to them.
So they was going to get arrested if they didn't go back to work.
Remember when they arrested all them politicians that didn't want to vote on something in Texas and they had to leave the fucking state?
I'm talking about somebody at a meat factory.
I'm saying, you think they wouldn't? If they're going to lock up politicians, you think they wouldn't? If all the cops go on strike, they're going to lock them up too, or the firefighters. You think they not
want to work? You could. So if everybody quit their job, they're going to go lock them up. What sense does that make?
I'm not saying that it makes sense. I'm not saying that they should do it. I'm saying they can.
They can. And that's
they can. Most of these laws give them the power to do that shit.
How? If you want to stop working at your job and you put in your 2 weeks and they like, Mel, you got to work because we're in a pandemic. You're like, no, I'm putting in my 2 weeks. They can come lock you up.
That's different. I'm not a police officer or firefighter. They didn't put that Defense Act on me. If they put the Defense Act on me and say, it's illegal for y'all guys to go on strike, quit right now. Because they can do that. Government been doing that. They did that shit in Wisconsin.
And that's
they do that all the time.
That's because they allowed it to happen. So if everybody band together and was united like the United States is supposed to be, then the government gonna put everybody in jail? And then look at it, if they put everybody in jail, then who gonna do the job? The government.
Okay, now you're just being funny.
No, I'm being.
When have everybody in the United States bonded on a single fucking top? It don't happen. It's not going. They know it's not going to
happen. That's how they get you, because they divide you, and then they get the people that's going to agree with what they saying that you have to do, and then that's how they can continue enforcing laws.
Yeah, because the majority of people are going to be like, they can do it because we have 3 different groups of people. We have the extremely fucked up, we have extremely well people, and then we have people in that gray area, which is the biggest area, that just want to go through their life and be left the fuck alone, and they ain't gonna speak up either way because it's not affecting them. As long as that group doesn't tilt one way or the other, the government gonna do what the fuck they want. They've been doing what they want. When did they ever stop?
Well, according to you, they should be changing gun laws. They should be telling us when to go to work.
No, I said they should utilize the gun laws that they have in place. And then I said they need to take a look at that Second Amendment. the right to bear firearms, because when it was made at a time when you needed weapons. The world is different now.
What? We don't need weapons now?
We do need weapons, but the world is different now. We don't need them for our everyday. We don't have to go hunt for food. We don't have to sit down there and say, if somebody try to rob me, ain't no help coming for 3 fucking days. It matters now.
The amendment was talking about for tyrannical governments. It wasn't talking about, it ain't say nothing about.
Who said it was talking about tyrannical governments? And that's another factor. They did want them to keep their weapons because they just had a revolution. But who said now that it's about tyrannical governments? It was worded specifically.
That's what it was.
You had the right.
So
you said you had the right to bear arms. That's what it was written for. You had the right to bear arms.
Because
you had the right to have firearms. They didn't say if somebody marched into the country, we gonna kill them. And by that point, here's another thing. You said China because China is communist. If somebody invaded this country, half the motherfuckers out there hide and be like, let the government take care of it. In China, you're gonna fight for every foot because those Chinese people will all stand by their government and them people.
How you know that?
It's a difference.
How you know
because
that?
The way they national, my brother over there, he talks all the time. They got a different mindset, dog. That's how I know. I got relayed information.
I know Ukraine gonna fight for their country, but I can't necessarily.
That's a perfect example. You can't say the same thing for China.
I don't know. I ain't see it. I gonna have to see.
That's because everybody know China got more troops. They got more troops because they got more people and they got more citizens ready to pop up.
I'm gonna have to see. I'm gonna have to see if what they gonna do first. Until they're in that situation, it's speculation.
Hong Kong, they got absorbed. They saw it real quick over there. But to this communism, is it right? Government's supposed to do what's best for the majority of people. And that's what they're supposed to do. Now, it might be fucked up for the person. I'm not saying it's not, but they all have that power. And none of them other politicians said you shouldn't use that power. They all shut the fuck up because they all wanted to meet. So they was quiet. Same thing with when they was trying to get these vaccines. They used that power to make these companies make the vaccines because these companies didn't want to just make the vaccines. I mean, it was money into that, but it's other things that it's money for. You know what I mean? Where they could make money. But they directed them to do it and they didn't have a fucking choice. They all didn't walk out the job. I'm sure they make it financially plausible for them to do it too, but they still made them do it. So we all can be made to do something. And the old saying is, if you kill enough people, they all do what you tell them to do any damn way and shit. And that's just the reality. But we ain't get to that point yet.
No, they tried to make everybody take the vaccine. Everybody ain't do that.
The majority of it did it.
Yeah, because that's a whole.
But the majority of it did it, so they got what they wanted.
And for
the majority of the people did it, right or wrong. The majority of the people did it, so they got what they wanted.
Because that's how you can see who complies. How many people you got complying to what you want them to do, even if it doesn't make sense. They
already got people compliant. It doesn't. I told you the biggest area is the gray area where people just want to be left the hell alone. So they're gonna do what they told them so they can be left the hell alone. They already got compliance. You're not gonna get total compliance across the board. They just want the majority. The majority rules. I don't care what nobody say. More people that's in your pocket, you're gonna win any kind of dispute when it comes to the government. If you can't show a lot of people, then you're not gonna win. It's the same reason when people go down there and protest something, and then they come down there with a couple thousand people, couple hundred people. Oh, those politicians count them people and they pay attention. The rule of thumb used to be when they sign a petition, let's see how many of them registered voters and where they live at, what district they in and shit. When they see that it's going to affect them, they take action. That's why we have so many loose laws when it comes to crime. All them people know somebody in jail. So they went down there and complained about shit. Said you should change this, said you should change that, came down with a bunch of people. They pay attention to that. The majority always rules the government. You can't control a few people with troops, but you can control, if the people back you, you can control thousands of people. Look at the Taliban over in Afghanistan. The US got you thinking they're a small group. The people over there, the males over there, they want to go back to that. They feel like that was a good way of living. So they're okay with it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to take control. So the majority is always going to rule. But now we went from inflation, from a recession to inflation, the communism. We all over this place today. So we're going to get into a final thought. And I don't have a question for final thought. I have no idea what to say about this for final thought because it ain't nobody to blame because the money is just fucked up right now.
Nah, it's always somebody to blame when it comes to that.
Okay, you tell us who's to blame.
You got to ask who's to blame.
Okay, well, you tell us who's to blame and what the question is.
Who's to blame? Who do you blame for this recession?
I blame the pandemic.
You blame the pandemic?
I blame the pandemic, and I'm gonna tell you why I blame the pandemic.
Uh-huh.
The problem with the United States government, which a lot of people don't realize, and like you said, there's not enough gold in Fort Knox. We are one of the few economies in the world that is based on people spending money. Like this government don't really try to save money. They try to make you get money and spend money. And that's how they have maintained their control of everything. Now, the pandemic fucked up the spending of the money, which the government doesn't want. Yeah, they can save on certain things, but when they print money up, when we're in a recession, during a pandemic, or whenever, they print money up, not so you can save money. If you take that money and you put it in the bank and you never spend it, you're doing them a disservice, which is why we don't have interest rates on our money when you save it in the bank. If you just put it and there are no interest-bearing accounts that are just like savings and checking accounts. They don't give you a percentage anymore because when they give you that money, they want you to put it back in the economy, spend that money, and then they can keep on printing money. So I blame the pandemic because it fucked up that plan. So that's my answer. I like not asking the question and waiting for y'all. I started off, yeah, go Big Mel. Go ahead now.
I don't know who to blame. I mean,
you do the parents.
I could blame.
They don't teach their kids shit.
Hey, I do blame the parents because you should be teaching your kids the value of saving money. So when things like a recession hit, which is not classified as a recession right now, but when things like that hit, you have money in the bank, no matter if it's getting interest rates or not. But yeah, just teaching kids the value of money, how to create good spending habits, and how to navigate through situations like this, which it's hard. It's hard for adults right now to navigate through this recession or whatever you want to call it, through this hard time of making money, spending money, and so it's all on the parents.
So I'm gonna start by saying when I was in high school, my history teacher, when I was 10th grade high school, what was that, 2002? I had a history teacher named Mr. Bradford. And he basically was teaching us about, recessions and the S curve that exists in economies. You got you got times of highs and times of lows. And essentially, if you follow history, it gives you all the blueprint that you need for what's going to happen in the future. The recession wasn't caused by the pandemic. The pandemic accelerated the recession, but the recession was going to happen regardless because of, like you said, our spending habits and the way that the way the government is set up, essentially. Our country has a lot of debt. That debt, they basically give it to Wall Street, and they make stocks and they make bonds out of it. They take those bonds and then they sell them on the market. They sell them to whoever wants to buy that debt, and it's a revolving cycle. There's no way out of it. It's essentially a Ponzi scheme. If me and you were doing what the government is doing, we would be in jail. Simple as that. That's why we're always going to have a recession every 8 to 10 years or so. Like I might not be able to tell you exactly what day or month is gonna happen, but because of the system that we have in place in our government, the way our money is filtered, the way our money is set up, we're gonna keep having these in our lifetime every couple of years, whether it's 8 years or 10 years or 12 years, whatever that time frame is. When the clock runs out, we're gonna be in another one. So it's regardless of whether or not we had the pandemic, we were gonna have a recession because there's too much debt. There's too much debt, and there's no checks and balance. You know, there's nothing the dollar is equal to a dollar because you and I and Aaron all agree that it's a dollar. That's it. That's a problem. That's an issue. As long as that continues to be the system that we use, we're going to keep having recessions. We're going to keep having these high interest rates. We're going to keep having these inflations. This type of stuff is going to continue to happen just because that level of that type of government spending, that type of the way we do our economy. This is what happened when you do that. It's not sustainable.
Well, I understand that, but we didn't have it at this level until the pandemic became a factor, though. We had inflation, but not at this all-time high. We had the debt; it was up, and then it was down.
Yeah, but we also didn't have the amount of money printed in the time that it was printed before ever. Like the government literally printed, I think it was 83% or something like that of the money that was in circulation the past 2 years was printed in the past 2 years.
And then there's also the fact that a lot of people that got that money, they didn't do nothing positive with it. They spent the shit.
I mean, it was made to be
It went back in the economy. That 83% went back in the fucking economy. I know what you're saying, and everything you say is true. And with the debt, I mean, honestly, unless this country fall to epic proportions, whatever money you owe somebody, how they gonna collect? You're not gonna never get debt from Russia, China, or the US. You might be able to try to do other shit in the marketplace to hurt them, but you can't collect no debt for them people because the only way you can collect the debt is to go take that shit. That's not gonna happen.
I mean, one thing I want to point out, because I know we're coming to a close, that a lot of this show, besides the definitions that we give out, is our opinion. So please don't take this episode down. Please don't take this episode down, YouTube. So
here's the disclaimer: the opinions of Big Mel are Big Mel's opinions, not because they're factual. It's what I believe.
The opinions of
I am connected. So since I am protected by the Constitution, I can tell you what my opinion is. So take it down, and I'm a lawyer up. Okay.
Now you want the Constitution to work with you.
I wanted the Constitution to work before. I said they need to change certain elements in the Constitution.
Yeah.
Like your voting rights. Your vote rights aren't permanent. They vote on them every few years to say that we are still allowed to vote as African Americans. Why can't that be permanent in the Constitution? What? Some of the things I have is common sense, goodwill things, not just because I want to burn it and then throw it in the trash. No, it's just a couple things need to be changed. That's all, or need to be tweaked. That's the better question. Yeah. Because when I say change, people like he just want to take the shit out. No, some things just need to be tweaked because we are a couple hundred years past that point. That's all. So I want to thank everybody for joining us for Combustible Elements. I'm Big Mel. I have no factual answers. This is my opinion. I'm joined by Ruben the Monarch. I called him the Wizard of Numbers. He disagreed. Don't take him off. And Aaron the Hitman, who will put disclaimers up because he hate putting this up and had the shit tucked down. So I want to thank you all for joining us for Combustible Elements. Like he said, go back and look at some of these other episodes. They tell you a whole lot. We move around. We move fast. We talk about a lot of stuff, subplots within a major plot. Like, subscribe to the channel. Look out for us. We out there. We're going to try going on Spotify on the video section, so look for that. We'll give you a heads up when we out there on that. I want to thank everybody for joining us. We look forward to talking to you in the future. If you have any suggestions, please send them in. We're willing to talk. We're willing to listen. We'll bring you on the show and have a conversation. We like to conversate. Back and forth. That's what we do. Thank you for joining us. Everybody have a good night or day whenever you're listening to it. Peace out.